So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hello everybody. We are here for Matt with Maddie. It's been a little while. It's been a couple months.
Yeah, totally not because I forgot what day it was and where I was and what I was Tuesday.
Yeah, hey, you know what? It happens.
Yeah, that was fully my bad. That was fully mommy brain, my bad.
Well, the nice thing was that when I said, I'm pretty sure Maddie's fine, I wasn't a liar about it. Because in reality,
true.
I was like, Maddie could be dead in a ditch. I would have no idea. And I'm like, no, I'm sure she's fine.
Yeah, no, I was just passed out with holding a 6-month-old.
Hey, that's okay.
It happens.
No, look, I mean, I had a backup plan. I always have a backup plan. Because, you know what? Sometimes things come up. So, but we are back. We're still looking at Matt McLean, the
so far the best Matt.
Oh, yeah, the best Matt.
The best Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say least objectionable, but yeah, best works too.
Okay, yeah, well, like, the best of the worst Matts.
There
right?
you go,
like,
yes.
But, like, he's not even in... Granted, I don't know anything about him personally, but he can put together a coherent sentence, put together a coherent, like, argument and discussion. Yep. It happens to be littered with just, like, things that are not factually true, you know?
Right, but it at least is, like, I understand what he's saying. It is an actual thought.
It's an actual thought, right? It's words put in an order that makes sense. I have no reason to believe he's a terrible person. Right? Like, there's no videos of him screaming at people that I know about.
Right.
So that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, he hasn't called for the extermination of entire demographic groups, which is another, like, oddly enough, that's a point in his favor. That, like, you've cleared a bar that for some reason we have had to set for creationists on this channel. Not genocide is it's a point in people's favor.
Not genocide is a bar. Yeah. So in terms of like that's why I call him the best Matt. Yeah. Right? You know,
it's a relative thing.
It's a relative thing, but he is, like, leaps and bounds above the other Matts.
Well, that's why we're doing this, is because I needed a break. We went back and forth between Matt Powell and Raw Matt for a while, and I was like, I can't do it. I have to stop. Yeah. We got to take a break. We'll be back to those two, though. Yeah. Don't worry.
I could reasonably believe that this guy is, like, an honest actor who's grossly misinformed, right? Like,
I couldn't. He has a degree in this stuff.
But we looked at the school he's from, right?
Oh, yeah, okay. It was kind of a creationist school, wasn't it?
Right, it's a younger creationist school that it's only, like, not all of its programs are accredited. We couldn't quite figure out if this one was.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, like, there is a world where he is just grossly, like, where he just believed authority figures in his life, right? That includes, like, teachers, and one of them gave them a degree, right? But that's me being super charitable. I like to be charitable until proven otherwise, and then I turn. But that's just...
All right, well, before we actually get into the video, we do have a couple of things to read off. First, Savage Cobra, kinda official, for $20 US says, gonna be at work at 0530, yay. That's pretty early, man. Although,
that's early.
You know what? When I had to do audio for the channel, I try to wake up sometime around 3:30 or 4 a.m.
Really?
Yep. That way I have, like, a couple hours. No one's up. No one's going to interrupt me. No one's going to turn on a coffee machine or a dishwasher or anything like that. And the only thing making noise is the crickets. And I already have a little filter to just filter them out of my audio because they're always at the same frequency. I'm just like, hey, I just don't include that frequency in my audio, and then you can't hear the crickets.
There you go. Perfect.
So, yep. Anyway, so they continue. approaches an asinine assemblage of albino asparagus amassed amongst an Angora amphora whose alleged academics are absent algebraic acumen. Hope Maddie and baby are well. And I'm pretty sure that was an attempt at AIG or a bag of dicks. So we're going to take our first drink for that one. And also,
cheers.
Maddie, are you and baby well?
Mm-hmm. We're doing so good. I am back to like being just drowning in dissertation stuff. So that's my life, just writing a dissertation, playing with a baby. I'm trying to think if she has any like cool milestones. Like she's almost sitting up and loves the swing we put up for her this week.
Nice.
But so that makes me proud, but like probably no one else.
Well, you know. Also, Sarah Talbert says AIG is and then sends the bag of dicks emoji. So we will take a drink for that too.
Oh, cheers.
And Sarah Talbert, of course, has been a member of the channel for 6 whole months and is at the amniote level. So thank you very much for your generosity, Sarah.
Nice, Sarah.
So yeah, we're here to talk about Matt McLean, but we have a drinking game that goes along with these Tuesday shows. Very occasionally, it shows up on Saturdays. Usually not. Usually because I don't really want to start drinking at noon. All right. Steve Arena for $5 says, Maddie, do you accept pelagic tunicate for what they are? Or is you a bad, lots of bads, poopy head like Dapper?
I don't think I have enough information to answer that question.
Okay. Well, just in case you're wondering, pelagic
tunicate? Yeah.
Well, so pelagic tunicates, unlike their God-fearing, patriotic, hardworking, American, benthic, sessile tunicate brethren, swim around in the ocean like horrible monsters instead of just being sessile suspension filters as God intended. So that's why they're not okay.
So the question is, there's room in my heart for all types of tunicates. Right?
Ridiculous. Catherine Delgado. Eventually we're going to get to the drinking rules, guys.
Yeah.
Catherine Delgado for $5 says, I'm glad I finally caught another live stream. Glad to see the set of open ocean Thunini equipment. I'm not sure I follow that last bit. But thank you. I appreciate the chat. All right. So let's see. Yes, we have a drinking game that goes along with this. Now, most of the drink triggers are in fact because of the creationist, but as we've seen, we do have a few that aren't, which, yeah. So, first, if the creationist says something that's just too stupid and I have to take a drink to cool my brain down, take a drink for that. If they get something that's actually factually accurate, and it's not just a direct quotation that they're reading off from something, we'll take a drink for that. Now, Matt McLean actually has a fair chance of getting some of those. Matt McLean does say things that are true. He intersperses it with lots of things that, are less true, but Okay, if the creationist tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that did not happen, for instance, if they confuse a conversation that they had with their shampoo bottle in the shower with a conversation with, say, a hypothetical Berkeley professor on an airplane to California that they might have sat next to, except that they didn't because it's a made-up story, we'll take a drink for that. Now, of course, that is sort of a judgment call. If this seems like a thing that just didn't happen, we'll take a drink for it. We'll also take a drink anytime that the creationist mentions the National Socialist German Workers' Party or various prominent members. Oh, it's a pelagic tunicate kit, says Catherine Delgado for $5. Oh, thank you. I just lost my train of thought. Where was I, Maddie? Help.
If they mention National German...
Yeah, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. There you go. Various activities, prominent members, especially in the first half of the 20th century. We'll take a drink for that. You don't know what the German...
Also, this Matt hasn't done that.
That's true, yeah. I mean, it's still in the rules, but yeah.
It's still in the rules, but just, again, like, reasons for this Matt McLean best Matt.
Yes.
Anyway.
Oh, Arachamian for $20 says, Happy National Velociraptor Awareness Day. I am now aware that it is National Velociraptor Awareness Day. So
cheers. I'm gonna
sure, we'll take a drink for that. Why not? That's fine. Mm-hmm. So I guess some Velociraptor facts. Velociraptor is the type group of a subfamily of Dromaeosauridae, the Velociraptorinae. They are in fact small, or about the size of a medium-sized dog, not the size of a person like you might have got from Jurassic Park. They've actually been found with direct evidence of Secondary feathers, those are the flight feathers on the ulna of a bird. They actually have ulnar quill knobs, which are attachment points for feathers. So this is like finding the claw bone and thinking that there's a claw. Yeah, it's direct evidence that there's a claw, just like these are direct evidence of feathers. Velociraptor also is known primarily from Mongolia, where we know for a fact that it at least attempted to predate on the dinosaur Protoceratops, because famously, a Protoceratops and a Velociraptor were locked in combat by I guess a sand slide, and then fossilized that way. So, interesting things about Velociraptor. There you go. Oh, also, I have a 1-to-1 scale Velociraptor skull that I'm looking at right now on my shelf over there.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, that was actually a birthday present from Bent Hovind. So, I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Maybe, probably more like 4. Anyway, yes, it was very kind of him. So, there you go, Velociraptor facts. Also, if the creationist pulls what we're calling, this is a new one, Maddie. You weren't here when we invented this one. This is Trojan source. So if the creationist cites a source that directly contradicts the point he's trying to make by citing the source, which they almost always do, we take a drink for that one. Yep. That one was invented with Randy Galuzza in mind, because my goodness does he love to do that. If one of us can make a prediction about where the creationist is going, where it's not clear, and we get it right, we'll take a drink. Now, I believe that covers the ones that are centered around the creationist. We have a special one for Matt Powell, which is if he ever goes like super whiplash into a completely different topic that has nothing to do with it. So, for instance, Matt Powell likes to go on and on about some topic and then immediately switch to how much he doesn't like trans people for no reason. Like, there's no connection. They'll just be like, and then trans people. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. But Matt McLean, I don't think, is going to do that, so we don't have that for him because he's not Matt Powell. Dewing for $2 says, turtles are the best tetrapod, and then an attempt to send a Godzilla, although I think you're on a platform that is screwing up the channel emojis, but we'll take a drink. Because that brings us into the drink triggers that you all can trigger. There are a few. Any super chat to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, we will take a drink for. You gotta be careful, though, because YouTube will not let you just type AIG is a bag of dicks, or are a bag of dicks, right? They won't let you. You gotta be clever about it. We especially like it when you can do alliteration. That's great. We will also take a drink if anyone super chats or milestone chats one of the kaiju emojis that we have, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Also, if either Mothra or Godzilla come along audibly, we will take a drink for that. And additionally, we will take a drink for each gifted membership. If you want to gift memberships, that is a thing that you can do. So over on the dollar button, in addition to super chatting, you can opt to gift memberships. Now, if you would like to get a membership, there's a few things. One is that it works based on, it's somewhat random, but you're more likely to get the membership if you've been actively participating in chat. So do chat if you want the membership. They're $5 a piece. If you get one, you will not be charged. YouTube won't ask for any payment information. And at the end of your 30-day membership, they will just basically send you a message on YouTube. Won't be your email or anything. Just like, oh, hey, your membership has expired. Would you like to renew? And you can just sit no. So there's no risk. But yeah, we'll take a drink for each one of those. And I believe that is all of them. Did I miss any, Maddie, that you know of?
I think you got them all. I got distracted because I was trying to pull up his source that's on.
Well, so he's yeah. All right. Also, I want to say, DM Wing for $2 says, "Hey, Godzilla with case sensitive." No, what actually tends to happen, we'll take a drink for that real quick. Certain YouTube apps just don't work for sending all of the what do you call it? The emojis. I don't know why. Emojis, yeah. YouTube says that they're working on it. Anyway, so Matt McLean has been going through... Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just want to point out that also, hey, friends, you can join in the fun of the drinking game without having to consume alcohol. Consume alcohol Absolutely. At your own risk. All that jazz. I'm playing with tea tonight because my tummy's been upset today. Yeah. So anyway, it's just for fun. Play with whatever you want. Yeah.
Also, we got a couple, well, now 3 more things. So first, the Bird Dog 33 has just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. So everyone send tetrapod emojis. Do not send pelagic tunicate emojis like BioAlley just did. Horrible, horrifying, unacceptable. Also, Scott Duke for $5 says, welcome back, Maddie, AIG, our tricky bag of Tricky Richards, and we will take a drink for that.
Cheers.
And Trailmix, who's been a member for 4 months, says, frogs are the second best tetrapods, very close, with a Godzilla emoji, so we'll take a drink for that too. Okay. Well, now that we're almost 20 minutes into the stream, let's talk about what we're talking about here. Basically, Matt McLean has been arguing that the fossil record does not support evolution, and he's trying to go up through the geological column to get there. Chris McDaniel, who's been a member for 5 months and is at the amulet level, says, hey, Dapper, kitten lady named one of the foster kittens Dapper. A cute little tuxedo, so cute. I thought it was cute. That sounds adorable. Oh. I want to think that it was named after me. It probably wasn't, but I'm not going to ask you to verify either way. I'm just going to believe that it's named after me.
Just believe it.
Yeah.
It's a dapper little kitty.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. We're going to talk about the Carboniferous. Matt McLean.
In the Carboniferous, we have something called Roemer's Gap. This is a 14 million year gap in the lower Carboniferous where there are almost no tetrapods.
Okay. So first, tetrapods are the 4-limbed vertebrates like like frogs and salamanders and lizards and people and horses and birds, but also ones that are secondarily lower limb numbered like whales or snakes. Those are still tetrapods because, it's a clade. So now when it comes to Roemer's Gap is being filled in, right? It's essentially an anachronism to say that it exists. Azo64, who's been a member for 5 months and is at the amulet level, says, rough day, nothing cute to say, lol, Godzilla. Well, we will take a drink for Godzilla.
I'm sorry you had a rough day, but I'm glad you're hanging out.
Hopefully this cheers you up.
So, this is for people don't know who I am, my background is all in physical science, right? Mm-hmm. Not biology. And certainly not paleontology or archaeology, right? Certainly not that. So I'm getting my PhD in atmospheric science, but I've got a background in math, geophysics, and nuclear physics, because I do. But this was going to be my wild guess because I'm looking at the 300 that time on our left axis, which I'm guessing is hundreds of millions of years. That's 333 million.
No, that would just be millions of years.
Oh, sorry, 333. Yes, sorry, that's what. Yeah, that's what I spoke incorrectly. Sorry, team. So
that's not 33.
Less than a billion years.
Yeah, right. Not 33.3 billion years, which is more time than the universe has been around.
Right, that's way too old. No. So yes, but 300 some million years ago. That's a very long. This is my first question. These would be my questions. It just presented with this bullet point. Do we see tetrapods before that, right? Or is this kind of they were there and then they disappeared and then they came back? Or is it just there are none, and then suddenly
Yeah, so what we actually see is in the Upper Devonian, we have stem tetrapods. So we have animals that they have 4 limbs, but they are not more closely related to modern tetrapods than they are to other animals that are not. So basically, if you think about...
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, so you gotta... There's these concepts called crown and stem groups, right? So crown, say mammalia, would be anything more closely related to anything inclusive of the platypus and a human, right? So if you're more closely related to either one of those, you're in crown mammals. Now, if you're very mammal-like, but you're actually equally related to those two, which means that your common ancestor was before the common ancestor of those two, you're what's called a stem mammal. So you're more closely related to crown mammals than anything else, but you're equally closely related to all the other crown mammals because your ancestor with them is before the common ancestor of all the crown mammals. And the crown group is just the ones that are around today.
Okay.
So this is stem tetrapods, which means they're equally related to frogs and to snakes and to humans, but they're definitely more closely related to tetrapods than they are to other groups that are also around.
Okay. So my next question would be, how hard is it? Like, what type, like what rock layers, if you will, do we anticipate this tetrapods to be in this time frame, and how hard is it to access that rock?
So those are great questions. So there's a few problems. One is, we might actually expect it from basically anywhere in the lower Carboniferous as a possibility. But the problem is that these early tetrapods are almost certainly going to be specifically coastal. And we don't always have a lot of that exposed, because a lot of the deposition that we get at any time on Earth's history is various inland locations, right? So we're not going to get these stem tetrapods in like desert deposits or something like that. So you have to find specifically rocks that are from coastal or like near coast, like rivers and streams and swamps, and that are exposed and that have not just weathered away. So we actually have trouble getting to these places, right? So famously, Tiktaalik, which is almost a tetrapod, it took like 3 years of excavating in the far like Arctic of Canada, where they could only excavate for like 2 months a year, because it was the only time of the year that the ground wasn't just completely frozen. And they had to go time after time, like several years in a row, because this is one of the only places on Earth with the appropriate rock. So you run into this kind of problem. But like I said, Romer's Gap is being filled in, right? Like this image here, if we were to do it again, we would have more taxa, and they would extend farther back into the lower Carboniferous. So, but even if we, even like, before that, sorry, go ahead.
How old an argument is Romer's Gap?
Well, the thing is, it's actually not much of an argument, right? The only person I've ever seen use it is Matt McLean. It's been a known phenomenon for, I think, about 100 years or so. Like, hey, we don't have a lot of tetrapods. Yeah.
I guess my question is, like, who is Romer?
So Romer is a paleontologist, or wasn't a
paleontologist. And who lived in the years?
Oh, well, the early 20th century is I don't have the actual dates, but yeah, we're talking like
gotcha.
teens, 20s kind of time frame.
Okay, yeah. So like, yeah, this was a problem 100. Yeah. So, and rocks we couldn't get to 100 years ago, maybe we can get to now with our advanced technology. We're better at like understanding where they're going to be. That's like, you know, I study Arctic weather, right? And people are shocked when I say that, like, I have no data before 1979.
Yeah.
Right? Literally none.
People weren't taking the measurements, so I got nothing.
I have nothing. And we have satellite data that starts in 79, and then we start to get observations, right?
Also, Tiktaalik, who's been a member for 12 months at the amniote level, says, what can I say? I'm just not a people person. That's why it was so hard to find you.
Cheers.
All right. So we're gonna hit play. Although I do want to note, I love that Aistopoda is on here. It's the one just to the right of Amniota, because Aistopods were these stem tetrapod, like sort of like amphibious creatures who were like snakes. They didn't have any limbs. They lost their limbs, and they slithered around in like the early Carboniferous swamps, looking all creepy. Great things.
Ooh. That's cool.
Here we go.
All right, let's let him talk.
Four-legged animal fossils at all. So you can see, and you're in the Devonian, you got a few tetrapods, and then there's this gap where you find almost nothing at all. And what's on top of the gap? Tons of different animals. Drastically different body plans of amphibians.
It's not clear to me what he means by body plan, but maybe he'll explain it. But body plan is one of those terms in biology that just kind of doesn't mean anything. It's like the way your anatomy is arranged, but like there's no specific amount of difference in arrangement that tells you whether or not you have a different body plan. Like some people say, like
I could make a strong argument that like a frog and I have the same body plan.
Yep. And there will be people who will disagree and agree, because it just depends. Like I've heard people say, "Oh, there's so many different avian body plans," and I'm like, "Well, I guess if you have a very narrow definition of body plan."
Yeah. But I guess he's trying to say maybe instead of body plan, what are those? Are those like these different groups up here?
Oh, these are all various stem tetrapod, mostly families, but there's a few other larger groups like Temdiscondyli.
Cool. So like different families, different species, different Okay.
But interestingly, in showing this, he's actually showing various groups that are themselves transitional between basal things like Tiktaalik and more advanced tetrapods, like when we actually get to crown tetrapoda. So, interestingly enough, like this looks like after what's basically a gap in the false record where we're actually missing things that did exist, we're finding then the relatives of the tetrapods. So, well, let's see what else he's got for us.
Okay.
Let me explain kind of the setup here. Okay? When you are in the Devonian, this is when tetrapods are thought to first evolve from fish.
Well, okay. That's at least when we're getting stem tetrapods coming out of the, now I'm going to forget, stegocephalian group of fish, right? So you have Euthanopteron, which is the stegocephalian, the sort of like representative of basal stegocephalia. And then you get things like Acanthostega and Tiktaalik, which are closer to tetrapods than Euthanopteron, or closer to tetrapoda. So where we actually say that amniotes come about is probably more like the very early Carboniferous than the late Devonian, but that's still up in the air because we don't have quite enough data to say. So, you know.
So you have animals like Tiktaalik here, which are the transitional form between fish and your four-legged animals.
A transitional form. Because remember, you've also got like Acanthostega and there's others too. Okay.
Yeah.
And when we get into our four-legged animals, you have things like Acanthostega here.
Okay, yeah. Ichthyostega. So I want to point a few things out here. One is that an interesting thing you get with Acanthostega is look how many fingers it has.
It's got a lot.
Right. That's because fingers are derived fin rays, basically.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so when you're evolving from something that just has a bunch of rays at the end of a clubby fin, you end up with a whole bunch of fingers. And then over time, that number reduces. But also, look, we have a very clearly, in Acanthostega, we have a very close association between the shoulder blade and the skull. That's because in more basal fish, like Euthanopteron, the skull and the shoulder girdle are actually part of the same bony complex. There's no gap between them. They don't have a neck.
Okay.
Their pelvic, or not pelvic, their shoulder girdle is actually just part of the skull. And it's only as we're getting into these that we're actually starting to see that separate. But you can still see they're very closely associated. Like, there's not a whole lot of play in that neck. We're also looking at where we have things like Tiktaalik, which is still basically just having fins, but it has fins with a good elbow so that it can kind of do push-ups a little bit. Maybe it can help drag itself across the ground a little bit better.
Yeah.
But we're still getting very similar types of anatomy to that. In fact, even the carpal bones in Acanthostega aren't clearly part of a wrist. Like the radius and ulna just kind of end with some fingers, and then there's a few extra bones that are just kind of like associated with the ulna. They haven't really turned into a full wrist yet. And we're getting similar things with Ichthyostega, where we're getting like these tarsal bones are just kind of a big clubby part of the foot, and we're getting all these extra digits and things like this. And we're still getting the fish-like tail that's using side-to-side motion to propel these animals through water. We're also getting basically the same shaped skull with eyes on top as we got in Tiktaalik, which apparently is just a fish, according to from what I can tell. So these are great transitional forms between Tiktaalik and later tetrapods. So the idea that we're going to just dismiss these as for their value in terms of demonstrating the transition is a little ridiculous, and I'm going to take a drink for it. Because, like,
Okay.
bro, this is exactly what you would want to see.
Okay.
Or Ichthyostega. And here are their limbs. Does anything strike you as odd? Maybe
I mean, yeah, lots of things, but we already covered them.
not. Maybe you don't spend enough time looking at bones.
I sure do.
Strikes me as very odd because this guy's got 8 fingers and 8 toes on each foot. Or hand, if you want to call it a hand. And Ichthyostega, we don't have the hands for it, but the feet have 7 toes on them. That is really weird.
Hey, that's true. We'll take a drink. That is, in fact, very odd.
That is odd, but it's really cool that it's coming from these like fin thingamajigs.
Rays.
Jeez.
Fin rays.
I never feel so like fin rays. There we go. You do this to me a lot, Dapper, where we get like
Sorry.
we're just showing how much Maddie does not know about, right? Or never took an anatomy course.
You know, that's
yeah.
okay. It's a learning experience.
It is, and I like learning new things.
Well, there you go.
I really like learning new things. So,
All right,
yeah.
here we go.
Now, what are these evolving from, supposedly? There's the fin of Tiktaalik.
Yeah, you notice all those rays. That's where that's coming from, right? You got a radius and an ulna, and you can see the ulna is actually probably the fusion of a couple bones in the Tiktaalik limb.
Mm-hmm.
You got that humerus right there with a joint that actually can give Tiktaalik some strength. And then you have a series of carpal bones, or what are going to turn into carpal bones, labeled as like X and the things around them. And then you see the fins, which are actually going to become finger bones. Like, yeah, that's what we're looking at. In fact, if you look at Acanthostega, his own drawing of it, that thing that's labeled as ulna, but is more distal than the actual elbow joint, there's something similar right there. Like, this is pretty directly transitional. Now, is it every single step along the way? No. But it's pretty darn transitional. It's a pretty good fit. Also, I don't know if this is dishonesty or if he's just couldn't get a picture like this, but it's a little bit misleading in that in the Acanthostega images, he's showing us the two limb girdles, right? So when you see things like scapulocoracoid and clavicle, right? Those are part of the shoulder girdle. Those are shoulder bones. Whereas with Tiktaalik, he's only showing us the humerus and what's distal to it. We're not actually getting the limb girdle there. So that makes these look more different than they actually are, because he's just showing you bones in Acanthostega that he's not showing in Tiktaalik.
Okay.
Now, Tiktaalik has those bones, right? And if you could see them, they would in fact look not identical to Acanthostega, but they would look somewhat similar. So, Meldeborn, who's been a member for 7 months and is at the Therapsid level, thank you very much, says, first, Godzilla, so we'll take a drink for Godzilla.
Cheers.
Thanks for the entertainment and scientific information you've introduced me to this past 7 months. You're leagues better than AIG, the prodigiously plump package of peckers. You know what? We'll take a second drink.
Prodigiously plump package of peckers.
I like it. Of late, we've been getting a lot more alliteration, and it's really, really good.
That's really fun. So, because I'm apparently a jerk, I'm taking exactly one, right? And it's seminar, which is where all the grad students have to get up and like once a semester give a research update, right? Just give like a 30-minute presentation on their research. And so many of my fellow grad students have such poor, just basic public speaking skills, right? I do not mean this, and I give them feedback, right? And I'm worried that I'm coming off as but I've just started giving like basic diction exercises, suggesting diction exercises in some of my feedback of the like, hey, your presentation's great. You're clearly incredibly knowledgeable on this subject. It was often difficult to like hear you or fully understand what you were saying. Recommend focusing on like slowing down and just like focus on diction, right?
It's not always easy.
It's not. And I was thinking that like, because I do some stuff with like our local improv theater, and we do diction exercises all the time so that we're like enunciating clearly while we're on stage and all of that. And that's been incredibly helpful for my just public speaking skills in general. And so I'm concerned I'm coming off as an asshole, but I've been writing tongue twisters in my seminar feedback recently.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're going to get a little bit more of what Matt McLean says is apparently some insuperable barrier between the evolution of Ichthyostega and Acanthostega and Tiktaalik.
Yeah.
That's the transitional form for the arm, and you're not seeing any digits there. But I don't want to talk.
I kind of am, though. See those distalmost bones? Those might be homologous to the digits, and also the rays.
I kind of am, and the fin rays. So
we're just gonna take a drink.
Rays, which are those like, I'm guessing those are depicted in those thin lines on that Carol 2009 image?
Yep.
Is that like cartilage? What's that?
So, it's going to vary a bit by taxon.
Okay.
In Tiktaalik, I believe they were probably cartilage. I don't actually know off the top of my head. I would have to really look into it.
Okay.
But one of the things about cartilage, right, is that that's what bone is before it turns into bone. So during embryonic development, your entire skeleton is cartilaginous, and then calcium gets deposited onto the cartilage. So there's really not a big difference between having cartilage and having bone. It's just, have you deposited calcium onto it? In fact, there are genetic diseases that humans can have that can result in excess calcification of cartilage, which can then kill you, because then your chest can't expand, you can't breathe, and you become completely not just paralyzed but like stiff as a board because your limbs are now just fused by bone. So now it's a horrifying condition, but what it drives home is that the difference between cartilage and bone is fairly minor. It takes very minor tweaks to get cartilaginous structures to turn to bone.
Yeah, so I'm looking at those fin rays, and I'm like, if each one of those lines sort of rigid material that's either cartilage or like a cartilage predecessor, right? Thinking back 300 million years, then like I'm surprised we don't have more digits, right? Because there's like 100 things on those fin that we might, and obviously actually. When that okay, so if we
go ahead.
So if you're saying that if we saw like that was like more closely related to Tiktaalik, but it started to get like actual individual digits,
we might see more.
It might have like
could have 16. Have lots and lots of who knows? Yeah. So that's one of the things is because while the gap is being filled, Romer's gap is being filled, we don't have every single possible step between the morphology of Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, right? So it's entirely possible that because we see through the Carboniferous a reduction in digit count, that may have started earlier with even more digits.
Yeah.
We don't know, but it's a perfectly reasonable supposition. So here we go.
Talk about that, even though that's interesting. What I want to talk about is, well, what are things like after the gap? Here's after the gap. There's Crassigyrinus.
Okay.
They like to call this thing the tadpole from hell. 2 meters long.
Yeah.
It's about 6 feet. It's pretty terrifying. Mouth. Chomp, chomp. Okay. You got Wachiria. Oh, no, sorry. It's Pedurpes. He's a Wachiriid.
Okay. One of the things I want to point out about Pedurpes is 6 fingers on the manus. We're getting a reduction. We're not at the pentadactyl hand yet. This is yet again another good transition between the previous forms we were shown and what we have today. So I'm just taking a drink for McLean continuing to show us good transitional forms and then saying, see, there's no transition. Don't pay attention to the picture I just showed you.
Even like humans today are like, we're going to lose our pinky toe eventually.
Possibly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a trend evolution. Well, anyway. Continuing the reduction is my point.
Yeah, it's easier to lose digits than it is to gain them. Gain of digits as a persistent trait in evolution almost never happens. But loss of digits happens all the time. Look at T-Rex. 2 little fingies. It was actually the thumb.
Little fingies.
Everyone uses their digits 2 and 3, like their pointer finger and their middle finger. It's actually the thumb and the pointer T-Rex has.
So it's so they can do pinchies?
Well, the thing is that unlike you, their thumb doesn't oppose the second digit. They actually curl in the same direction as opposed to having different directions. So you can't actually make an accurate T-Rex hand. Your hand is shaped wrong.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hannah is about developmentally. We're almost to the pincer. She's starting to learn the pincer.
Oh, she'll be able to grab things soon.
It's a developmental thing. She can whole hand things, right? But this motion is new.
Yeah. Tyler West for $4.99 says, "Can you address the young Earth creationist accusation that Tiktaalik was pieced together from several animals?" So yeah, it's absurd. Tiktaalik was found in a relatively small area, and the original find was in 2 sections, both of which were in close articulation with the parts in those sections, and both of which were closely associated with each other. So there's just no realistic chance that this is the case. And we found subsequent finds of Tiktaalik that were in various degrees of association and articulation. But we basically now have, we can trace most of the skeleton of Tiktaalik from articulated finds. There's just no realistic possibility that it's a chimerical taxon.
So I have a question here. And it feels like this is a science, creationists, younger creationists trying to take advantage of scientists being careful with their language to the creations are trying to use that to point to conspiracy. like, well, if you found it articulated, why don't you just say that, right? Because I'm guessing that there's like specific language for, we found this fossil, right? Or this fossil, and all of these pieces were in this area, and it's like the most likely outcome is that this was all the same animal. But you could imagine, like, let's say it fossilized in a brick like this. This is just me throwing out a hypothetical. And like over time, that like piece of rock split in the middle, and like this half was pushed up, right? Because that happens in geology all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then, oh, hey, now it's not in one piece. Now it's technically like disarticulated, but it's kindergarten logic to understand that these two things go together, right?
I think you're actually giving the creationist arguments more credit than they're due. Usually when creationists argue that a find is chimerical, they just kind of say it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they actually tend not to have a detailed analysis of why they think that and not even like a faux detailed analysis of why they think the find doesn't count. They're just like, well, it wasn't all found together, by which they just basically mean not every single joint was found in direct articulation with all the bones associated in that joint. That's about as sophisticated.
Which is an absurd standard.
It is, absolutely. By that standard, virtually no fossil taxa are well known.
I mean, like, by that standard, I bet a lot of like graves of a person whose name we know wouldn't fit that rule.
We've identified numerous murder victims by name without having them in as close articulation as we have Tiktaalik in.
There we go. Thank you. That's perfect. That's
it's a ridiculous standard that no one would have, except that they're trying to poo-poo science. Vishanti, who's been a member for 20 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, fight the elimination of pinky toes by the big toe, TM. Yes. Do not let your pinky toes evolve away.
Don't let them. Yell at your pinky toe every night.
Stay there.
Say, you're important.
Right.
Stay.
And you've got legless tetrapods. So something that looks like a snake, but it's actually an amphibian.
Well, it's not clear this is a tetrapod. Might also be a tetrapodomorph, but fine. It's not like we don't have legless tetrapods today.
Aistopod. That's what's after the gap. Let me tell you something. These things look nothing like the things we just saw.
We just saw that they did.
They are drastically different.
Sorry,
and
yeah, I'm taking a drink for that. They just obviously did.
Also, if you want to make that claim, I need you to show me, like, if the claim you want to make is these don't look the same, and specifically thinking about the hands, right, or the front,
right?
Then you've got to show me. You've got to show me the skeleton of the one on the bottom, right? And then the other two he picked, I'm guessing.
So he's intentionally picking.
Don't have hands.
I think he's intentionally picking highly derived tetrapods from the Carboniferous, because these are clearly tetrapods that have had drastic limb reduction. In the case of Aistopods, all the way to essentially nothing. In the case of Cressidrinus, like almost to nothing. But that's just like saying that, hey, many skinks have reduced limbs. Therefore, lizards don't share common ancestry with other lizards, which not even he would accept. And it's just like, that's not how that works, my dude. The fact that some organisms reduce or lose their limbs is well understood. In fact, we have lizards with 4 reduced legs. We have 2-legged lizards where only 2 of the legs exist and the other 2 are gone. We also have lizards with no legs of multiple different varieties. Right? We have more than one kind of lizard with no legs, including snakes. We also have snakes with 2 legs. Like, we have the whole variety when it comes to lizards. There's no, and also we still have limbless amphibians today. There's really no debate that limb loss is a thing that can happen in evolution. We also have fossils of birds that didn't have 4 limbs. Moas did not have 4 limbs.
I guess what the argument he's making is that
I think it's as simple as these things. 2 of these things don't look that much like the things I showed before. Therefore, no evolution.
Yeah, so he's focusing a lot on limb reduction,
Mhm.
And as all tetrapods, it's a dumb argument. It's a bad argument, and I don't.
Yeah. We got a few things to read here. My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, AIG are a succulent sack of sporadic spears, and now that I have poured my second beer of the night, although I didn't get the greatest of pours, we'll take a drink for that.
Cheers.
Goop23 says, they'll also say it for finds that are in articulation. And yeah, that's true. Like, if you read Sanford and Roop's book, Contested Bones, they will take taxa where we have specimens that were in direct articulation. Like, the elbow is just, the whole thing's like right there. We have a humerus connected directly to a radius and ulna. And they'll say, no, that's actually from 2 different species. Like, bro, how do you get a chimerical skeleton in articulation in the rock, in the fossil record? Don't worry about it. T Lane just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much. Everybody send some tetrapod emojis for TD Lane joining the channel. Although he's rejoining the channel, because you can see he actually has the badge for having been on a channel number for over a total of a year. So, re-up on that subscription. And he says, AIG is a bag of Dark Eldar. We'll take a drink for that. Okay, here we go. Let's get a little bit more Matt McLean.
How different they all are from each other. Vastly different body plans.
I mean, not really. We're still seeing a neck. We're seeing a separation between the shoulder girdle and the head forming that neck. In the isopods, sure, we're getting reduced, but like the limbs have the same bones.
And creepy tadpole guy has itty bitty hands.
Right. I mean,
right. He's got back legs and then itty bitty hands.
Yeah, like this is not what I would call drastically different. I don't get it. They're really not. In fact,
their eyes are placed the same.
Pedropies is starting to get more laterally placed eyes, but yeah, other than that,
that's true.
But yeah, like they have the same bones. They're in roughly the same place. They're just different sizes. Like this is basically like saying, oh hey, a Shetland pony and a Clydesdale, completely different. Like, well,
completely different.
Okay, hold on now. Let's talk about that.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Are they completely different? No, I'm exaggerating a bit, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Now, they have started to find fossils in Romer's Gap.
Oh. We'll take a drink for that being true, because yes, like I said,
true.
It is being filled in.
Mm-hmm.
The last few years in Scotland, they've been digging up, and they're finding little bits and pieces. But do you know what they're finding?
What, Matt?
They're not finding animals that are transitional from our Devonian animals into our Carboniferous animals.
Okay, but given that you don't think that anything that you showed is transitional when it so obviously is, Matt, I don't take your word for it.
Yeah.
Like, Matt is just pissing on the audience and telling them it's rain and expecting no one to sniff and tell the difference.
Yeah. That's... I would be really curious for Matt to define for me what a transitional form would be. Right, like I would like to know what his standard for a transitional form is.
Yeah, I would too.
That would be interesting to me. And if I was going to try to have a conversation with him, like that would need to be we would need to clarify some vocabulary.
Right.
That would be a point.
They're finding our Carboniferous animals and they're finding our Devonian animals. That's what they're finding.
Which are already in pretty good continuity. So okay.
Yeah.
The animals from below and the animals from above, they find them there. They're not finding the animals that link these.
Too young to feel this old, just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. So we will take 5 drinks after I announce who they went to. So Luigi Potter was gifted a membership, along with SG Cruitt, Ernex, Shade Dragon, and I feel like I'm missing someone. Oh yes, Mary Ann the Night Owl. Sorry about that. We will take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. By the way, I'm drinking a lemon shandy, which is a Weiss beer with natural lemonade. So, yeah. Well, so here in Arizona, it's basically already summer, right? Like we're already getting into like the upper 80s Fahrenheit and 90s Fahrenheit. So, well, lower 90s Fahrenheit.
It's like perfect spring here. Granted, the spring in Oklahoma, so like this is the spring before tornado season.
Right.
Where it's like mid 60s and just perfect.
Yeah.
It's great. I've been able to spend time out with the baby. We put up a little baby swing for her that hangs from our pergola, and I put her down on. We've got like a soft outdoor rug out there, and she was like, "It's a little dangerous, Dapper." She was rolling around and like realizing that like, oh, if I roll like this, because she's able to roll over forever, she's starting to understand the concept of rolling as a form of mobility. I was like, oh no. So she's thinking about getting mobile, which I've got to do a lot of baby proofing.
Yeah, that's very important. It's not always easy. All right.
There's a lot of things she can grab right now.
Okay, so we got a couple things to read. Let's see. Tiktaalik says, speaking of weird, or for 225 Argentinian pesos, which it took me forever to remember what that unit was. Argentinian, for some reason it was just like right out my brain all the time. For 225 Argentinian pesos, says, speaking of weird creationist fossil takes, remember all Neanderthals are just old people, even the children? Yeah. All of Neanderthals are just old people with like arthritis. It's like, okay, but what about this 6-year-old girl?
Yeah.
Is she an old woman with arthritis? Because she's a 6-year-old girl.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was quite the take. Erechamian says, Jitach tach vish no chai witwich tlaplu, which, as always, not sure about the grammar. So, I'm not positive what we're going for. For one thing, vish isn't... I don't think that's a valid word. Jitach tach vish. So jitach tach is I'm existing or I'm continuing. Let's see. So they'll never take the little toe will never be taken, as I think what we're trying to get at with no which tlaplu. Because it's
I like it.
It's like tlaplu is it will be taken, note is never, and then chai wit. So chai is like use the little toe, it's a verb. And so chai wit is the thing that uses the little toe, which presumably would be the little toe. And then widge is my, so like my little toe will never be taken. But I'm not sure exactly what we're going for jitach tach vish. So thank you very much, Erechamian. If you tag me and go with the exact English that you're going for, I can probably work on getting a translation that's perhaps a little more fluid. So anyway, here we go. We are now on to more Matt McLean.
They're nowhere to be found. Well, let's go up the Paleozoic a little bit higher. Let's go to the Permian. Let's talk about our non-mammalian synapsids. What?
Oh, good.
These are your mammal-like reptiles. This is what we're going to spend the afternoon talking about, early afternoon.
DM Wing for $2 says, don't tell a word is not valid. Fair enough. You know what? Jitach tach vish is a perfectly cromulent word in Klingon.
I'm excited about that. I've been very excited about talking about this.
Oh, good.
Why are they laughing? Okay. All right. So when you look at your non-mammalian synapsids, there are two basic groups. You have your pelycosaurs, like dimetrodon, and your therapsids.
I'm taking a drink. That is not a good way to put it. My goodness.
Okay.
So, pelycosaurs isn't a group. It's just all the non-therapsid synapsids.
Okay.
Like, it's saying that there are two kinds of birds. Ducks and everything else. Like, that's... I mean, you can say it, but it's a weird thing to say.
Gotcha.
So, like, I hate that phrasing. Pelycosauria is a grade, right? So, a grade is different from a clade, right? So, a clade is all the groups of animals that descend, or organisms, I shouldn't say animals, that descend from a particular common ancestor, right? That's a clade. Okay. So, you can define a clade by naming two taxa, and then saying that anything that is their common ancestor or anything evolved from it is in the clade. So, for instance, you could pick a clade by saying, okay, humans and field mice, their common ancestor, anything descended from it, form a clade.
Oh, okay.
That clade happens to be UR Contiglera, whatever, but you can pick any two things, right? You can say like humans and amoebas, and that comes out roughly to I think like Uniconta or maybe Opistheconta. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. Now, a grade is a group of animals or organisms that have some kind of similar but basal traits that they share in common, and that exclude things that evolved from members of this group, but they're grouped together because they have this sort of basal morphology, right? So Pelicosauria is a grade. So it's basically the sprawling limbed synapsids. So only have one temporal fenestra, and their limbs are all out off to the side, so they walk more like lizards than they do like mammals. Those are pelycosaurs. But it's not a grouping that's a natural group, right? It's a paraphyletic group because it does not include Therapsida, even though some pelycosaurs are more closely related to Therapsids than they are to other pelycosaurs. So
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Saying that there's two basic kinds of synapsids is, and that they're pelycosaurs and Therapsids is just weird and not accurate.
Okay. I like the ducks and not ducks example because there's clearly a bird that's more related to a duck than it is like, I'm just going to go with ostrich.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, for instance, chickens are way more closely related to ducks than they are to ostriches. Way more.
Yeah. But we were choosing to group duck and not duck. So, okay. I have kind of a strange question. In the top picture, the fan thing on the dude's back, are those real? Did anything actually have the crazy?
Yeah. Dimetrodon did. That's an example of something that did.
What purpose does that serve? Do we know?
So we don't know for certain. Of course, there's always the display option, which is...
Yeah.
Okay, look.
Which is, I mean, peacock feathers, right? Male peacock?
Display
male
structure...
Peacocks,
yeah. Well, all peacocks are male.
All
Peahens
peacocks are male, I know.
are female.
Peahens.
Peafowl.
Peafowl.
There you go.
Ha!
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, so display is always an option, but here's one of the problems, right? Display is kind of like when an archaeologist says something is used for ritual purposes. It's kind of what happens when like you can't figure out what else it is. So you're like, well, maybe it's a ritual object, because you can't really say that no, it's definitely not a ritual object. Similarly, like you can't say a structure wasn't used for display if you find it in a fossil. Like, how would you go about showing that? So to some extent, it's sort of like the fallback option was for intraspecific display. Like, oh, okay, maybe that's maybe.
Yeah.
But, so there is always that one. But also there are options like using it to help regulate body temperature. So one option is if you turn it so that the broad side is facing the sun, you absorb more heat. But if you turn it so that the sun is like going along the narrow end, then you could shed heat back towards the environment if it's heavily filled with like blood vessels, right? So the blood vessels can absorb heat and shed heat. So that's
big old heat.
Another option, and it's probably a bit of a combination, right? So a big prominent structure like that ends up often being used for display, but it can also have other functions, and it might not have evolved for display. It might have evolved for like thermoregulation or something.
Okay.
But yeah, so those are the two big hypotheses, and it's not an either or, right? It can be a both and.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go.
These are the animals that you are supposedly evolving from. Okay, and that's what like I said, we'll talk about.
Speak for yourself, Matt. I'm a dinosaur. All right.
About in the afternoon. I brought a friend with me from Masters. You say you bring a friend. You're talking about somebody you can talk to. Thought about doing ventriloquy for a while. I have so many of these skulls in my office, you know. This is dimetrodon.
Specifically, that's Dimetrodon grandis, but okay. You know, we'll give them, that's true. That is Dimetrodon. That's the genus.
Okay.
The species there is grandis, but whatever. You got the genus right. And most people don't know that there is species of Dimetrodon, so. As you might be able to tell from the name, Dimetrodon grandis is the big one.
Yeah.
This is the skull of Dimetrodon. This is a big animal. This thing can get 12 to 15 feet long. Look at the teeth on that. That is clearly a predator. There are lots of other.
Okay, Matt, but you think that all animals before the flood were eating plants, and that those teeth are actually adapted for eating plants? So I'm gonna take a drink for you not even knowing your own nonsense.
Cheers. No, but you did misspeak. You said before the flood, and I think
Before the fall? Okay, yeah, before the fall. But hey, you know what? The fall is before the flood, so
that's true.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I did misspeak. Actually, you know what? We're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to get myself a couple new bottles of beer, or shandy, I suppose, technically. You know, we're going to be back in just a second. Maddie can get herself a new cup of tea, because I'm sure that tea is cold by now.
It's cold now.
Yeah. Time for a new cup of tea.
Okay.
All right, guys, we'll be back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, please enjoy the musical stylings, that is, of one Bent Hovind. Well, I'm back. I'm not sure where Maddie is. And we've run out of intermission video. So I'm back now. So a couple things. My Unfinished Journey for $5 says, Dapper Dinosaur, do we actually know that specifically he, that presumably is Matt McLean, thinks that thinks that animal predation results from the fall? Yes, he does. I double checked. I looked at a few of his articles. In more than one place, he has indicated that predation is in fact a part of the fall. However, he's also said that maybe the predatory morphology of certain animals didn't appear until after the fall as a result of, like, basically hidden genetic traits manifesting themselves after the fall. No mechanism is really given, no specifics, just kind of like, wonky things before the flood, maybe. I don't know. Like, okay, cool. Thanks, guy. Welcome back, Maddie. Also, Border Barbecue, been a member for 5 months, is at the amulet level, says, Mothra and the uprising pelagic tunicates will take a drink for Mothra. Thank you very much, Mothra.
Cheers. Sorry, I had to boil water. It took me a minute.
That's okay. So, a couple things right before we really get into it. Guys, this channel is almost entirely supported by the direct support, monetarily basically, of my patrons, channel members, and viewers. So, if you want to keep this channel on the air the way it is now, where we have almost every single... It's a very rare that we have any fewer than 3 videos per week. That can only happen because of your support. So if you would like to make sure that keeps happening, there's a few options to help support. One is joining the Patreon, where you can get early access to like 5 months worth of videos at this point. It's ridiculous. You can get your name in the credits, other benefits at higher tiers. You can get a discount for pledging annually. You can get similar benefits in the channel memberships. They're almost identical. There's no annual option though. And I do get slightly less money from it, but you do get the emojis, so there is that. But there's also, if like a monthly or annual thing isn't your deal, there is a merch store in the description that sells blankets, pillows, shirts, onesies, stickers, phone cases, all sorts of stuff. There's also a Amazon wishlist if you just want to get me one quick thing just to, make my life a little bit brighter. Get me something arriving in the mail from Amazon. It's always an option. And if none of that is your thing, if you can't or you just don't want to support financially, make sure you like this video. Make sure you share it around. Leave a comment. All those things. So that helps the channel grow and it helps with the algorithm. But I'm ready to dive back into it. Maddie, do you have anything that you want to add before we get right back in?
No, I'm excited.
All right, Matt, tell us about Dimetrodon.
Tell us.
Animal bones from its deposits with dimetrodon tooth marks on them, including possibly dimetrodon bones with dimetrodon tooth marks on them. It's a pretty crazy world. And this is thought to be a very, very distant relative of yours.
I mean, that's also true for literally everything else, but yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, sure.
We'll take a drink. That's true, Matt. It is thought to be a distant relative. Vandeli 1998 says, so is this Matt better or worse than the other Matt? This is the best Matt. And
this is the best Matt.
Of the other 2 Matts, both are worse.
Yes.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
On the line leading to mammals. Okay, I just wanted to show you that, because how often do you get to pick up a dimetrodon skull in a church? Okay.
Presumably every time you bring one to a church, Matt. It's your dimetrodon skull. You can do it literally anytime you want.
Anytime you want, buddy.
Yeah, that's...
I do appreciate how much of...
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
Right. Oh, I do appreciate how much of, like, a paleontology...
Oh, nerd, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it makes me a little sad, right? That, like, buddy, you could have, like, studied this stuff at, like...
A real school?
A real school, and you could have followed that passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead...
Anyway. No.
Instead, this is where we're at.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
That's not the real skull, but it's a cast. I wouldn't bring the real skull right here. And look at that,
It would be too heavy for one thing. A real skull would be almost all stone. So, yeah.
Now, when you look at the fossil record of these things, what you see are 2 different branching things. There we go. Your pelycosaurs are on the left there. Your therapsids are on the right. Now,
okay, but it's not 2 different branching things. This is what we were talking about. Taking a drink because, like, dude, you're just doubling down on this. So here's a drink. Okay, so everything. So you see G, right? G is labeled as Therapsid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now everything to the left of that is quote unquote a pelycosaur. But one of the things to point out is that I'll say this, Sphenacodontia, or Sphenacocontidae, right, which is the family, which by the way includes Dimetrodon, is more closely related to the Therapsids than, say, the Adaphosauridea or the Caesasauridae or the Varanolpidae, which are way over there, over by B, right? So you can't say that this is the two main branches.
So it's a little hard to read. So let me just make sure. So G is the Therapsids. Therapsids. Sorry.
There you go. No, hey, I have trouble saying Sphenacocontidae, so it's a thing.
Okay. And we're looking at, when you say Synaptocontidae, something like that, that's looking at the left branch of F.
Mm-hmm. No, the right branch of F.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Cool.
Right. So
I'm just making sure we're talking about the same thing.
The actual branch that we actually have on this, if you were to divide all of Synapsida into two branches, is between B and C, right? So on the one hand, you have Ophioconodontidae and Varanolpidae. On the other side, you have everything else, including the Therapsids.
Yeah.
So Varanolpidae is no more closely related to the other. Well, Varanolpidae plus Ophioconidae are no more closely related to each other than they are. Sorry, no more closely related to the rest of Pelycosauria than they are to the Therapsids. So saying that this is the main branch, it's just not true. It's on the screen. I'm taking a drink for it. It's a second drink. I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Johnny Rapine, been a member for 1 month, and is at the annual level, says, first, Godzilla, so we take a drink for Godzilla.
Rawr!
Anyone not subscribed to Ember's channel should rectify that immediately. They don't have nearly enough subbies yet. Mothra. I'm not sure who Ember is, but hey, if Ember deserves a subscription, then go for it. I am not someone who's like, no, never,
subscriptions, not like pie.
Yeah, there's
you can
get more. Also, pie isn't even really like pie because you can bake more pies.
That's true.
I guess in the long run, there's only so many pie ingredients at any given time in the entire planet. So, I guess there's a maximum number of pies, but we're nowhere close to having made that number of pies.
That's true.
We got a long way to go before we run out of pie ingredients. All right, here we go.
Now, what happens if we remove the transitional hypothesized transitions between these groups, right? What if we just show the actual fossil records of these groups? That's what you see.
Yeah, a group of organisms that get closer and closer in terms of morphology to actual mammals, right? If you still go, with the exception of Cynodontia, right? Actually, no, not with the exception of Cynodontia. This is actually basically just a list of things that get more mammal-like as you go from left to right, with a few exceptions, right? Ophioconodontidae and Varanolpidae are no more mammal-like than each other, and Eothyridae and Cassidae are no more mammal-like. They're both equally mammal-like, but overall, this is just a grouping of things getting increasingly mammal-like from left to right. So, it's still there, because the thing is, the quote-unquote evolutionary supposition, it's based on the data that remains when he's done that, right? All he's done is say, hey, what if we just don't analyze the data?
Yeah, what if we just look at the raw data?
Okay, I guess. You don't have to analyze the data, but it's a weird thing to do if you're going to call yourself a scientist.
Yeah. Well, and then, so if this is have examples of these, would these be families?
Most of these are families. Actually, I think they all are, now that I check. Yeah.
Okay.
So Cynodontia is not...
species of these families, or something, but species in these groups, right?
All the non-Therapsid groups are families. The Therapsid groups are actually wider than families, but whatever, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So we have all these different species in these different families or groups or whatever have you. And we're people who think about this really hard grouped them according to certain suites of traits, right? And, found that, hey, this group has this and has this amount of relationship, right? I don't know, that's where all the work is,
Right.
you know, like it's certainly work to go out and like do field work and like go to a paleontology dig site. But like, yeah, sorry, this is just like, he's doing the
equivalent of taking like the satellite data and just leaving it on a spreadsheet and not doing anything with it after that.
Right. Or taking the satellite data and more importantly, leaving it as so it's like infrared, the strength of infrared signal, right? And not turning that into anything useful.
Right, yeah, just leave it as like what absolute brightness did this thing come in at? Like, oh, okay. What use is that?
That's not so that's like, I don't even at that level. I use it as derived sea ice properties, right? And so that's like, you want me to just have effectively surface albedo? No, surface albedo would even be derived. You just want me to have like strength of infrared signal,
right?
Just and like, then say nothing about it.
Tell me,
that would be the equivalent.
What's the brightness of each pixel on the image I got? Like, okay. Yeah. What?
And that's your research.
Vandalia 1998 for $2 says, would all those lines be separate or one kind? According to him, at least all those pelycosaurs would be, I think, one kind. I don't know how many kinds he would put in the Therapsidae because those aren't families. Like Biarmosuchia is like more than a family. So same thing with Dinocephalia, Gorgonopsia, etc. Certainly, he would not say that there's one cynodont kind because, I mean, all mammals are cynodonts. Cynodonty is where mammals live. So it would probably vary. DM Wing for $5 says, what if we ignore the data? The birth of creation science. Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's what this amounts to. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Basically, two different faunas preserved at two different horizons in the rock record.
They're not, though, because look, Varanopidae is overlapping with Sphenacodontia, which is also overlapping with Biarmosuchia, Dinocephalia, Anomodontia, and it's probably slightly overlapping with Gorgonopsia, right? This isn't just two different things. And the thing is, again, Sphenacodontidae is more mammal-like than Varanopidae. And Dinocephalia and Biarmosuchia together are more mammal-like than Sphenacodontidae. There you go. Gorgonopsia is again more mammal-like than, say, Dinocephalia. Same thing with Aerocephalia, all the way until Cynodontia, which includes the mammals. You can't just say, oh, it's just two completely different groups, especially since Biarmosuchia has more in common with Sphenacodontidae than it does with Varanopidae. Like, none of this works. I'm taking a drink for, like, you're just taking away any data analysis and then lying about the data anyway, now that you've done it.
And taking away, there's nothing on here that would allow a like lay audience member to understand any of it, you know? There's like,
and B, by the way, thank you.
He didn't explain that like that these are families, these aren't individual species, right? These aren't, you know what I mean? Like, to a non-paleontologist, like, this slide is inscrutable. Like, they're
well, one of the things is this, without that data analysis, you don't actually know what the characters were that went into the data analysis in the first place. So you can't tell from this slide that, as it's been pointed out, I have in fact been mispronouncing Sphenacodontidae because it's one of those ones that I have trouble with, and also there's been beer. So like, you don't know why Sphenacodontidae is more closely related to Biarmosuchia than it is Varanopidae. You don't know what actual physical traits went into that analysis, because without that analysis, this is just the temporal extent of various taxa, which is a fine thing to have on a graph, but you can't go from that to, because these things existed for a certain time, therefore they're not related. Like, it doesn't follow. And when you do the actual work of figuring out, is there evident relationships between them, the answer is yes. They fall into a nested hierarchy. So you have to show why a nested hierarchy does not indicate descent with modification, because it does in all the circumstances where we can check, right? So when humans intelligently design things, they tend not to fall into a nested hierarchy unless that was a design goal. So, like, vehicles, silverware, factories, like whatever you want, right? They don't tend to fall into nested hierarchies. However, languages, which are the result of descent with modification, do fall into nested hierarchies. Manuscripts of things like the Bible or like Plato's dialogues and things like that, right? These do fall into nested hierarchies because they are the result of descent with modification. When we get to organisms, they also fall into this nested hierarchy, probably because they're the result of descent with modification.
So just to be clear, when you say like designed things, like what you're saying, like vehicles, and there's no like we can pick those two things and we're not gonna find the thing from which they both descended. Is that
generally speaking right? So like let's if you wanted to do it with say cars, right? You could say, okay, we're gonna start with like manufacturer, right? So we'll group all the Toyotas and all the Hyundais and all the Fords together as their own groups, right? Well, okay.
Yeah.
But then under that, we'll say, well, we're going to do like sedans as one group. Like, well, hold on a second. A Ford sedan is no less a sedan than a Toyota sedan.
Right.
So, sorry?
Yeah, so we can't, how do we can't, there's no nested hierarchy.
Right. Whereas when we go with, say, animals and we say, okay, we're going to go for like, we're going to start with, say, amniotes, right? And on one side we have diapsids, and on the other side we have, say, synapsids, right? For them. You never get to a lower area that's basically, well, in this case, it's just the same as the one on the synapsid side. It's just diapsid, right? Like there are no diapsid wolves. There are things that might have a niche kind of like a wolf, but they're very little like a wolf. Similarly, there are no like synapsid snakes. It just doesn't occur. Whereas you can't do that with cars, where you can say, yeah, this is a Ford sedan. It's just as much a sedan as any Toyota sedan. Same thing with trucks, right? Like this Hyundai truck is no less a truck than this Ford truck. That's because they were designed specifically. They didn't have to take the original Ford and only tweak it slowly by only modifying what came before. They can just say, hey, let's start from the ground up, and we'll design a Ford with this truck bed and with these two doors and the folding seats so you can get in the back and everything. And now you've designed from scratch a truck. Similarly, Toyota can be like, okay, guys, we're going to come up with our own big rig design. They don't have to tweak like a Corolla or something, right? In order to get to the truck. They can just start with a truck. It's fine. Too Young to Feel Sold for $5 says, AIG is a sack of human organs that resemble the humble Priapus caudatus. Sorry, Priapulus caudatus, which is in fact, as far as I remember, a penis worm. That's a group of organisms that exists, and you'll never guess why they're called that.
I actually have a question. Is a penis worm because it looks like a penis, or because it's the crazy parasite disease thingy that crawls up a penis?
The former.
Check.
Looks like a penis.
It looks like a penis. Okay.
Well, it looks like a penis when it's not eating, because when it's eating, it like turns part of its mouth inside out and it's covered in teeth. So, that if your penis looks like that, please go see a doctor.
That's a problem.
Yeah, you should not have
That's
teeth
not what
there.
it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
No.
Tooth penis is a medical problem. Get that checked out.
A little bit of overlap, but most of them just kind of start without showing ancestry between them. We'll come back to that in the afternoon.
You're showing us a list of transitional fossils. That's what this is. I'm taking a drink for like, they don't show any transitions. Like, dude, this is a list of transitional species. Or, well, genera, family, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, what if we jump all the way up to the Cenozoic? I wanted to go through the Mesozoic. We don't have time to go through Mesozoic.
Okay,
so much
sure,
to
why
talk
not?
about there. I want to go to right after the dinosaurs go extinct. We haven't even talked about dinosaurs. Just skip them. You know what?
Ooh, but okay.
They get enough attention. There's some movie or something. Okay. Let's talk about mammals, right? When you get above where the dinosaurs stop showing up in the fossil record, and what's called the Paleogene. So your last dinosaurs in the Cretaceous, once you get in the Paleogene, suddenly tons of mammal groups show up. And this has regularly been compared to the Cambrian explosion, an explosion of mammal groups. Pretty much every order of mammals that exists today, you can find an example of it in the Paleocene or the Eocene. Just suddenly there. And if that weren't weird enough, guess what?
It's not weird at all. You just said it was the end of a mass extinction. That's when you get adaptive radiations. I'm taking a drink. Okay.
So so let me see if I understand what happened. Right, mass extinction event, such that by and large, the only land creatures that could survive would have been small things that can like eat roots, right?
It's a little more complicated than that, but I mean, you're in the right ballpark.
Of course. Yeah, so like it dramatically favored small mammals, right? Yeah. Or what we would think of as small mammals, right? And so now there's all these resources available, right? Because the big scary dinosaurs went extinct. Non-avian dinosaurs.
Well, the big scary ones are usually the non-avian ones, at least in terms of like the end Cretaceous.
And so now, since we have this mass extinction, now all of a sudden there is so just basic population dynamics. You would expect an explosion in population of those like little mammal guys.
And also, basic evolutionary biology says that when all the former niches that used to be filled very neatly are now suddenly vacant, new things evolve to fill those niches, because now there are ways of life that are gone like unused, right? No one's doing that thing. Like no one's the big megafaunal browser. No one is the big terrestrial predator. So things rapidly evolve to fill those niches. Yeah,
rapidly on like geologic timescales, let's be clear, not rapidly as in 6,000 years.
I also have to answer a question. Too Young to Feel This Old says, I must know, do you actually know the penis worm's binomial nomenclature offhand? Or did you guess it from the context clues of the super chat? I'm aware of Priapulus caudatus as a binomial. I do in fact know that species. That is not a new one for me. So, yeah.
You would have gotten me, bud. That's the...
Well, okay, but I spend a lot more of my time looking at things listed in binomials than you do, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, no, listen, I think my reading between the lines there is there's trying to be a gotcha moment, right? And so I was trying to say, like, oh, you would have gotten me, but you're to get Dapper.
Yeah, you gotta get up pretty early in the morning to get me on the binomials.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear what he has to say about birds.
You say binomials, I assume it's a math thing.
Goodness. I much prefer the binomials in taxonomy to the binomials in math. TD Lane for $5 says he completely skipped Theriodons, Cynodons, Probignathia, Mammaliformes. I wonder why, with a Godzilla. Yeah, we'll take a drink. And yeah, that's a good question, right? Like, Therapsida includes a whole bunch of groups that are even closer to mammals than the Gorgonopsids that are... I think he showed a Gorgonopsid. Maybe it was a Cynodont. I don't know. But yeah, that are like way closer than like, you know, Cynodont, like the genus. Skips right over those. Because yeah, we have a very smooth transition from basal Therapsids like Gorgonopsio or like Biarmasuchus all the way to actual crown mammals, going from like the end Permian all the way through into the Triassic and parts of the Jurassic. Where we finally get
these
real
are
mammals.
All birds.
Yeah, he switched to birds. We haven't heard him say anything about that, but he's just going to say that birds also had a big explosive increase in...
But he was talking about mammals, but these are all birds. That's a very different argument.
The previous slide had mammals. We paused right as he switched the slides.
We paused at the... Okay.
Yeah.
I was...
So.
Okay.
Birds do the same thing.
Yeah, see, birds do the same thing.
Once you get above that layer, suddenly there's tons of birds.
I mean, it's not like there's a dearth of Cretaceous mammals or birds, or at least mammaliforms, right? And when it comes to bird, it depends on exactly what you mean by birds, because one of the things that I want to note here is that he's only showing us a section of crown aves, right? DM Wing says, Gorgonopsid for $2. Yes, Gorgonopsids are really cool. So, like, there are other birds that are still around that are not on this chart, and also there are what you might call stem birds, depending on how you're defining bird, that were all over the Cretaceous, that he's also not showing you. Like, where are the enantiornithine birds, right? Where are, like, the Hesperornids? Like, where are the ichthyornithines? Like, where are they? They're just not on here. Why? I don't know. But they're definitely in the Cretaceous. They're all over. They go extinct before the Paleogene. How come they're not on here? I can't think of good reasons. I can't think of bad reasons, though. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you wanted to mislead your audience into thinking that the Cretaceous bird diversity was lower than it actually was. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to impute that really, really, really kind of crappy motive there, but it's hard to think of another reason. I'll just leave it there.
All over the place. And you know what I found out? Frogs do the same thing. And just recently I heard a talk that
They do, actually. It's an interesting thing. Frog diversity is really low in the Cretaceous and throughout the Mesozoic until you get to the Paleogene, and they just kind of explode. And that one is a little bit curious because they don't seem to have like some wide range of niches that was like significantly like vacant right at the end of the Paleogene in a way it wasn't at the Cretaceous. That is a bit of a minor mystery as to why frogs increase in diversity so much at the beginning of the Paleogene, but they do, and it's cool. And you know what? I'll take a drink. Because most people don't know about the frog diversity increase at the Paleogene. So it's a real thing, and it is a bit mysterious. Okay.
freshwater fish even do the same thing.
Less so.
Why is everybody exploding all the time? That's what we got to ask.
Because it's the end of a mass extinction. Oh, look, you put a bunch of stars near mass extinctions. Let's talk about that, I guess.
Hey. Cool.
I'm not talking about spontaneous human combustion.
No, that was a joke that didn't. We're gonna take a drink for a joke that didn't. I know one guy in the back laughed, but I'm sure he's got a bigger audience.
Yeah.
Oh, these patterns are not what we would predict. What would be predicted by naturalistic evolution? Let's hear his argument for that before we call it stupid.
A pattern of mass extinction?
Well, we have to find out exactly what he's going to say before we make too many judgments about it.
Yeah, I want to know what patterns we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just go ahead and say it. These patterns are not what you would predict from naturalistic evolution. Now, that doesn't disprove naturalistic evolution.
No, just not what we... Okay. It is...
What patterns?
Okay, so I'll say this. Evolution on its own does not predict mass extinction, right? Like, you can't get from evolutionary biology to, therefore there will be mass extinctions. Other things that are not evolutionary account for mass extinctions. Things like volcanoes, things like asteroids, things like this, right? Like, even like weird solar activity could cause a mass extinction.
Yeah.
These are not evolutionary parts of evolutionary biology, right? They're outside of biology that are being imposed into biology. They're then causing a mass extinction. And then evolutionary biology is used to explain what happens in the aftermath.
Yeah.
Shanti says, Dapper Dinosaur, an explosion of frogs? I didn't realize Spaniards went back that far. My goodness, is that a deep cut into multilingual puns.
I learned something very fun the other day. The record of the plague of frogs in like how it's written down in Hebrew in Exodus, which is that apparently it's recorded as frog singular.
It is.
The plague of frog. And I choose to believe it was one real tenacious.
Yeah, one giant frog.
It could be one giant frog, but I prefer tenacious, regular-sized frog that made himself a problem for all
going around being a jerk to all of Egypt.
Everyone. So much that he plagued everyone.
Yeah, that was a really, really annoying frog.
Yeah, that frog in particular.
Guy's a huge dick.
Huge dick.
All right, so evolutionary biology doesn't predict mass extinctions, like I was saying, but it does predict what happens afterwards, which is, in fact, an increase in diversity of the remaining taxa, right?
Yeah.
So if mammals make it through, if birds make it through, if frogs make it through, they then go on to fill all sorts of niches that are now absent. Like, this is exactly what you would predict. Anyway.
What I'm saying is, if I were an evolutionist and came to the fossil record, that is not the pattern I would expect to see.
It's just a lie. I'm picking another.
That's a lie. Yeah.
Matt McLean is he's too smart to not know that that's a lie. I do not believe that is just ignorance.
I would expect to see a nice branching tree everywhere I looked. Sure, they'd be missing fossils occasionally, right?
You are seeing a branching tree. What?
Yeah.
What is he talking? I'm taking another drink. What are you talking about, Matt? You showed us the branching trees.
Yeah.
You're talking about millions of years of evolution, but I would expect to still see a very nice tree. But I don't see it.
What?
So
I don't even know what his argument is.
I don't even know what his argument is. Also, like, this isn't the only way, like, paleontology isn't the only way we study naturalistic evolution, right? You get a beautiful branching tree when you approach this from a genetic standpoint.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is the branching tree from the genetic standpoint matches very closely onto the morphological one, and even accords very well with the fossil tree.
Right. Which is, so, like, you would expect the least filled out tree should be the one, right? Because that's, like, the hardest to find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fossil trees are always going to be your spottiest.
That's always going to be the spottiest. But when you have two disparate fields that match up, right, of genetics and paleontology, right? Different fields, and they match up. They show you the same pretty tree. That's... Buddy, like, have you not read a biology paper in your...
He must have, because I can't imagine that he managed even to get an unaccredited degree at a real university, even a creationist one, without reading a single real biology paper. Like, that can't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There be other ways to interpret the fossil record?
Meh.
Well, one option is progressive creation. And listen, if we didn't have the scriptural account, that'd be a pretty good guess.
So, progressive creation is something that really no one believes in anymore, but it was a common belief. And basically it was like, at various times, God just creates new things as you go up through time. And he just kind of does it. And ultimately it means he would have to do it in a way that just kind of looks like they evolved. Which is a little suspicious, but like...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the most parsimonious answer. And it's not an answer that gives us any ability to predict future data, but it's at least consistent with the existing data. It's also, you know, completely unfalsifiable, so... Yeah, for numerous reasons, it's not a scientific idea, but it's at least compatible with the data in a way that young Earth creationism just isn't.
Yeah, it's a theological idea that's compatible with the available scientific data. Is that... Yeah.
No, I don't think this guy is an old Earth creation. I'm pretty sure he's a young creationist.
Yeah.
I would look at things and I'd say, yeah, these animals were created and then they were destroyed. And then these animals were created and they were destroyed. Because that's kind of what it looks like at first glance. But you know what? We do have the Bible.
Oh.
And the Bible informs our understanding on that. And so we can look at this.
Okay, we're going to take a drink.
So you're not a scientist.
Yeah, you're not a scientist.
Okay.
Science involves coming to the data and to the maximum degree possible, disregarding any previous bias that you have, any conclusions that you want to draw, and then looking at the data and see what the data presents to you as the most parsimonious option that you can test and you'll also use to predict future data. And then you go ahead and you test it. And if you can't disconfirm it and it successfully predicts future data, then you give it provisional assent.
Yeah.
The opposite of science is this, where you say, well, I have a book that is not the data. This book is not actually the evidence of the rocks and the fossils and the genetics and whatnot. It is a separate thing.
Yeah.
However, based on my reading of it, I am going to form a conclusion beforehand and then fit anything else that I find into this conclusion. Whether it can be tested, whether it makes useful predictions, whether it's even possible. And that's what Matthew McLain is doing. That is what makes him not a scientist. I don't care how many PhDs he has. I don't care how many papers he's written. It doesn't matter. If you approach the data with a preconceived conclusion, you're not doing science. You're doing something else. That's just what it is. All right, here we go.
From a young Earth model, how might our understanding of Scripture inform what we see in the fossil record? Well, we think that certain rocks, by looking at the geology, were laid down by the flood.
Oh, okay, here's another drink. So here's some fun things about this. Geologists aren't just dummies who don't know what flood rock looks like, right? Flood rock
Yeah.
has certain characteristics, and certain rocks can't be formed by a flood because, well, for one thing, they just aren't formed by water. So, for instance, it's very hard to have subaerial tuff during a flood. Tuff is volcanic ash. Subaerial, you might be able to guess, is similar to submarine, but instead of under the sea, what's subaerial? What do you think, Maddie?
Under air.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of forming under the water, it's just forming just on the ground, above the water, just on the ground, under the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want you to let me know, if the entire world were flooded, and so the surface of the world were entirely underwater, could you form subaerial tuff?
Sure couldn't.
No, you could not. Or how about aeolian sandstone, which is sandstone that's formed by wind deposition going, again, subaerial. Could you form that under a flood?
Sure couldn't.
What about an evaporite, where a large body of water evaporates to nothing, leaving behind deposits of non-volatiles dissolved in the water, like salt? Could you form that if the entire world was under a flood? No, you couldn't. And yet, what do we find throughout the entire Paleozoic and Mesozoic? We find things like evaporites. We find subaerial ash. We find aeolian sandstone. And those are just the rocks that couldn't even form underwater. Floods themselves have characteristic high energy depositional traits, right? You can tell if deposition is high or low energy. You can tell if it's a single one short event or many long events. For instance, we have annual and seasonal cycles that can be recorded in rocks. If one year-long flood happens, how many annual cycles could you get in any rock deposit, Maddie?
I'm sorry, I zoned out because I was looking for Matt McLean's bio.
It's okay. If a rock is deposited during a single year-long flood, how many annual cycles could be recorded in that rock?
1.
Yeah. So if we find a rock that has, say, I don't know, thousands of annual cycles recorded, where does that leave our flood model?
Non-existent.
Yeah. Now, if we have a rock who's physically impossible to deposit at a rate much greater than, I'll use imperial units here, about an inch per 1,000 years, and it's, say, 800 feet thick, could you get that in a single 1 year long flood?
No.
Yeah, but that's limestone deposits like that are all over the world. So it's not that you came to the data, Matt, and said, this looks like flood rock, because it absolutely does not.
Right.
The idea of these rocks being deposited by a single flood is absolutely precluded by virtually every single aspect of them. Here's another example.
Yeah.
You know we have fossilized raindrops?
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. But you know what happens when rain hits the ocean?
It doesn't stick around. It just becomes part of the...
Exactly. It just becomes part of the ocean. How would you fossilize rain under a flood?
That's a great question.
You can't.
Also, how do you get trackways fossils?
Also true. Floods characteristically erase ichnofossils and bioturbation. So ichnofossils are things like tracks and body prints and things like that. And bioturbation is where animals have gone and mixed up sediment before it's actually lithified. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, where does it leave the flood model? Up the Colorado River without a paddle. Nice. So what we find, fossil trackways and bioturbation all through the supposed flood layers. But floods erase those things. So, none of this adds up. I can't... Saying that the Paleozoic and Mesozoic rocks are the result of a single year-long flood is literally exactly as plausible as the flat Earth being true. Just as much as you cannot make a map of the flat Earth that works, you cannot make a sedimentology of the Mesozoic and the Paleozoic that works with the idea that it's all laid down by a single flood. It is literally impossible. This isn't just like we don't have evidence to support it. This is, we know it's not true. It has been disconfirmed 100%. There is no chance of this. It is physically impossible. So let's keep going. We don't have a whole lot longer that we're going to keep going with this, but we're going to push forward a little bit more.
And many creationists, geologists, and paleontologists think other ones were deposited after the flood. And of course, some would have been deposited before the flood, as Dr. Mortensen talked about during the creation week even. But actual fossils, we think, are, things that used to live. And so they're being killed later on.
By the way, Horseflesh says AIG is a bag of Bix. Very nice. I like it. Remember, for 5 months at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much, Horseflesh. All right, here we go.
Being killed during the flood and after the flood.
Oh my goodness. So Suave has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. So here we go. We're going to take some drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those gift memberships, went to Jillian Wren, Alien Bird, Katie Lewis, Jason Hyatt, and Astral Nekomimi. Which, by the way, it took me a long time to be able to say Astral Nekomimi without stumbling over it, because that is quite the name. I like it, don't get me wrong. It's just took me a while to figure out all those letters. Because here's the thing, right? Every once in a while, people are like, "Oh, Dapper, I love hearing you say all these like fossil names and things like that so fluidly in your videos." That's because you don't get to see the raw, you don't get to hear the raw audio. The raw audio is a mess. Like, I'll try like 8 different times to say like one word, and I'm like, okay, I finally got it. And then I'll cut out the previous 7 attempts, and all you hear is the final version, and it's all nice and wonderful and well pronounced. Yeah, I frequently cut out a third or more of my raw audio. It's just bad takes that I just cut out. So.
And in the flood, what we would expect to see is preservation of different environments. And after the...
No, that's also a thing that floods don't do. I'm taking another drink for this. My goodness. We started out with not taking that many drinks for this being stupid, because he didn't say that many stupid things, but it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I got distracted because I found the website for the school he's currently like a professor at.
Ah.
Which is called the Masters University, which sounds real culty.
Yeah, it does. That sounds like something out of Manos: The Hands of Fate. Have you seen Manos: The Hands of Fate? That's an amazing movie.
I have only seen the Rift Tracks version. And it's, oh no. Ugh. They have a women's ministry's certificate of achievement.
What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure that is like my guess is it's a really sexist thing for like women who want to be like, my guess is that they have a seminary with this school. My guess is that they won't let do that. But you could get like a certificate in women's ministry.
I have encountered churches that do allow female pastors that had a women's ministry, which was basically like the women's social club at the church.
That's true, yeah.
So like, and I don't think having a women's social club is on its own sexist. I think it's okay to have...
No. This is a certificate from a university.
Yeah. I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate. Like, maybe it's not as bad, but it's still,
So it might not be as bad. That's just like in the culty, like extremist, younger creationism, extreme evangelicalism world, women's ministry is like code for, like, that's code for stuff, you know?
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance.
Right, that's like, because women are allowed to teach other women, right? But like not men.
No, you can't have that.
Can't have that.
Unacceptable.
Okay, I closed that website. I'm sorry, my focus.
No, it's okay. All right. So we're gonna continue on a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right.
Flood, we could actually watch environments change over time, which is
right. That's what I was gonna say before we talked about the women's thing. I had to like jog my memory. Okay, so floods don't actually tend to preserve individual environments, and this is because the majority of the debris from a flood is pushed by the headwaters, right?
Yeah.
So this is something you can just observe if you ever are in a flooding area, which, by the way, stay safe if you are. Those are no joke. People die in floods.
Floods are the most dangerous, like, natural disaster that like we experience. It's always the most dangerous, like, weather event. It causes the most property damage.
Yeah.
Be safe. Floods are scary.
one of the things you'll notice is if you watch a flood come through an area, most of the debris, including biological debris, is at the front of the flood. And all gets jumbled together. And then when the flood finally settles out, there's this one big mixed up deposit that it lays down where all of the junk gets put at the beginning. And if you go upstream from that, what you tend to get is just spillways where the flood has washed everything out downstream. You do not get a flood.
We get that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we get that out at the my parents live a lake, right? And it's like a dammed lake. And every, you know, when there's heavy rains and right, the lake level goes up till it's like at the top of the dam, right? And then over the rest of the summer, it comes back down, and then absolutely you can see exactly where the top of that like rise was, because that's where all of the debris settled.
Yep. So basically, this is just, if a flood acted literally the opposite way that floods actually act, then maybe it could result in this with like, I guess, but you know what? If things were different, they would be different. Isn't really a profound argument, nor is it what you might call evidence.
Yeah, this isn't like this isn't how rocks work, and I am not a geologist.
This isn't how anything works.
This isn't how anything works.
Yeah.
And like, he's not a geologist, right? He's a paleontologist.
Well, okay, so paleontology is often part of the geology department. So
sure, but my point here is he should not be speaking like to geology, right? So what's my point? My point is, if you're speaking outside your specialty, you should only consensus research, right? Like,
but his whole point is that the consensus is wrong, so he can't.
Don't like it.
I know. All right, guys, but we're going to start wrapping up here because we've only got a few more minutes until we are at the... Actually, we've got less than a few, or the 2-hour mark, but we're going to go a little past. It's fine.
It's okay.
So, Maddie, do you have anything that you want to announce? Anything coming up on your channel or any place else that people can find you?
Honestly, no. Mostly I'm just going to be here or playing tabletop games, random places, like tomorrow night, Top Hats Off.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'll be writing my dissertation and taking care of a baby.
Hey, those are both very busy types of activities. All right, guys. Let's take a look ahead on this channel. So we are talking about April 2023, if you're watching this in the future. So on the 20th, we will be having the next episode of... Now, I don't remember, so let me check, because I'm having a complete, like, brain shutdown. Yes, Sal's Pal, number 2 out of 3. This is about John Sanford. This one is called When in Doubt, Just Lie, which, interestingly enough, is similar to another video title that I have coming up in a few months, which is When in Doubt, Lie About Darwin. It happens a lot, where creationists just lie. Anyway, that is on the 20th. And heads up, I will not be there for the premiere. I will be getting ready to board a plane, jetting off. So, then on the 22nd, I will be premiering the Cenozoic Part 2, which is the final part of my multi-part series about the history of life on Earth that I did with Jackson Wheat. It was done live on his channel. This is a mirror. So there is that. I also will not be in chat for that because I will be busy doing things like vacation-y things, because I'm flying off to go take a break, have a little bit of a vacation. So that's why you're getting these uploads instead of a live stream. So please do still watch it. It's a really great show. I really enjoyed doing it. So please do still come to it. But yeah, I won't be there for the premiere. On the 25th, we should be doing Jackson with Jackson, and I will be there for that. That is the plan, unless something happens. I don't know. Then on the 27th, the third Sal's Pal video will come out. And I have no idea what's going on for the 29th, but it'll probably be a Dapper Reacts where we continue on with the Genesis Apologetics Convention, where the only people they could get were like the Institute for Creation Research, which, in case you don't know, has fallen to be like the bottom of the big three. Because the big three in Young Earth Creationism are AIG, CMI, and ICR. ICR used to be the top dog. Now they're a distant third to CMI. It's honestly kind of sad. But hey, that's okay. So that's what's coming up, guys. Like I said before, thank you very much for all your support, for all the super chats, the gifted memberships. It really helps the channel. The channel would not exist if it were not for your support. Or at the very least, it would not exist in the way it does now. It might have like a video a month or something, right? But because you guys are supporting, I can spend hours and hours doing this without, like not being able to eat or afford to have a place to live. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, so with all that, we're going to head over to the end credits, and I will hopefully see you in about a week.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Tapioca Weasel, Danny5252, Eleron Teller, Furavara, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Maddie Babby, San, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bead, Scriptic Mystic, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, and Pat L. Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.